Chapter 18 of The Beloved Vagabond by William John Locke. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Simon Evers. Chapter 18. "You perceive," said Paragot, waving a complacent hand as soon as Blanquette had retired to make the necessary purchases for the evening meal, "you perceive that she is perfectly happy. You were entirely wrong. All is for the best in this best of all possible worlds." When my master adopted the Panglossian view of the universe, I used no arguments that might cloud his serenity. I acquiesced with mental reservations. We talked for a time, Paragot sitting primly on a straight-backed chair. He had abandoned his sprawling attitudes, for fear, I suspect, of spoiling his new clothes. The position, however, not making for ease of conversation, he presently took up a book and began to read, while I amused myself idly by making a furtive sketch of him. Since his metamorphosis, he was by no means the entertaining companion of his unregenerate days. He himself was oppressed, I fancy, by his own correctitude. The eternal reading which filled so much of his life did not afford him the same whole-hearted enjoyment now, as it did when he lolled dishevelled, pipe in mouth and glass within reach, on bed or sofa. This afternoon, I noticed, he yawned and fidgeted in his chair, and paid to his book the distracted attention of a person reading a back number of a magazine in a dentist's waiting-room. My sketch, which I happen to have preserved, shows a singularly bored Paragot. At last he laid the book aside, and, gathering together hat, gloves, and umbrella, the precious appanages of his new estate, he announced his intention of taking the air before dinner. I remained indoors to gossip with Blanquette during its preparation. I had considerable doubts as to her optimistic view of things, and these were confirmed as soon as the outer door closed behind my master, and the salon door opened to admit Blanquette. She came to me with an agitated expression on her face which did not accord with perfect happiness of spirit. "Dis donc, Asticot," she cried, "what does it mean? Why did the master not go on his holiday? Why did he not send for me? Why has he cut off his hair and beard and dressed himself like a monsieur? I know very well the master is a gentleman, but why has he changed from what he used to be?" I temporized. "My dear," said I, "when you first knew me, I wore a blue blouse and boots with wooden soles. Almost the last time you had the happiness of beholding me, I was clad in the purple and fine linen of a dress suit. You weren't alarmed at my putting on civilized garments. Why should you be excited at the master doing the same?" "If you talk like the master, I shall detest you," exclaimed Blanquette. "You do it because you are hiding something." "Ah, mon petit frère," she said, with a change of tone, and putting her arm round my neck. "Tell me what is happening. He's going to be married to the beautiful lady, eh?" She looked into my eyes. Hers were deep and brown, and a world of pain lay behind them. I am a bad liar. She freed me roughly. "I see. It is true. He is going to be married. He does not want me any longer. It is all finished. Oh, mon Dieu, mon Dieu! What is to become of me?" She wept, rubbing away the tears with her knuckles. I tried to comfort her, and lent her my pocket-handkerchief. She need have no fear, I said. As long as the master lived, her comfort was assured. She turned on me. "Do you think I would let him keep me in idleness while he was married to another woman? But no, it would be malhonnête. I would never do such a thing." She looked at me almost fiercely. There was something noble in her pride. It would be dishonourable to accept without giving. She would never do that, never. "But what will become of you, my dear Blanquette?" I asked. "Look, Asticot, I would give him all that he would ask. I am his, all to do what he likes with. I have told you, I would sleep on the ground outside his door every night if that were his good pleasure. It is not much that I demand. But he must be alone in the room, entends-tu? Another woman comes to cherish him, and I no longer have any place near him. I must be far away. And what would be the good of being far away from him? What shall I do? Tiens, as soon as he marries, je vais me fiche à l'eau." "You are going to do what?" I cried incredulously. She repeated that she would chuck herself into the river. Sophie Charlot is not the French of Racine." I remonstrated. She retorted that if she could not keep the master's house in order, there was nothing left to live for. Much better be dead than eat your heart out in misery. "You are talking like a wicked girl," said I severely, "and it will be my duty to tell the master." She gave her eyes a final dab with my handkerchief, which she restored to me with an air of scornful resentment. "If you do, you will be infamous, and I will never speak to you again as long as I live." I descended from my rhodamantine seat, and reflected that the betrayal of Blanquette's confidence would not be a gallant action. I maintained my dignity, however. "Then I must hear nothing more about your drowning yourself." "We will not talk of it any longer," said Blanquette frigidly. "I am going to cook the dinner." As the prim salon provided little interest for an idle youth, I followed her into the slip of a kitchen, where I lounged in great contentment and discomfort. Blanquette relapsed into her fatalistic attitude towards life, and seemed to dismiss the disastrous subject from her mind. While she prepared the simple meal, she entertained me with an account of the farm near Chartres. There were so many cows, so many ducks and hens, and so many pigs. She rose at 5 every morning and milked the cows. Oh, she had milked cows as a child, and had not forgotten the art. It was difficult for those who did not know. Tiens, she demonstrated with finger and thumb and a lettuce how it was done. "I shall not forget it," said I. "Oh, it is good to know things," she remarked seriously. "One can never tell," said I, "when a cow will come to you weeping to be milked, especially in the Rue des Saladiers." "That is true," replied Blanquette. "The oddest things happen sometimes." Light satire was lost on Blanquette. After dinner she continued the recital of her adventures for the master's delectation. The old couple, no longer able to look after the farm, were desirous of selling it, so that they could retire to Evreux, where their only son, who had married a rich wife, kept a prosperous hotel. "Do you know what they said, master? Why does not Monsieur Parigot, who must be very rich, buy it from us, and come to live in the country instead of that dirty Paris? C'est drôle, hein?" "Why do they think I am very rich?" "That is what I asked them. They said, if a man did not work, he must be either rich or a rogue. And they know you are not a rogue, mon maître." "They flatter me," said Parigot. "Would you like to live in the country, Blanquette?" "Oh, yes," she cried with conviction. "Il y a des bêtes. J'adore ça. And then it smells so good." "It does," he sighed. "I haven't smelled it for over 3 years. Ah, to have the scent of the good wet earth in one's nostrils, and the sound of bees in one's ears. For 2 pins I would go gypsying again. If I were a rich man, my little Blanquette, I would buy the farm, and give it to you as your dowry, and sometimes you would let me come and stay with you." "But as I shall never marry, mon maître, there will be no need of a dowry." She said it smilingly, as if she welcomed her lot as a predestined old maid. There was not a sign on her plain, pleasant face of the torment raging in her bosom. In my youthful ignorance, I did not know whether to deplore woman's deceit, or to admire her stout-heartedness. "My child," said Parigot, "no human being can, without arrogance, say what he will or what he will not do, least of all a woman." Having uttered this profound piece of wisdom, my master went to bed. During the next few weeks, Parigot suffered the boredom of a provisional condition of existence. He went to bed early, for lack of evening entertainment, and rose late in the morning, for lack of daily occupation. With what he termed the crapulous years, he had divested himself of his former associates and habits. Friends that would harmonize with his gloves and umbrella he had none as yet. If he ordered an aperitif before the midday meal, it was on the terrace of a café on the Boulevard Saint-Germain, where he sat devouring newspapers in awful solitude. Sometimes he took Blanquette for a sedate walk, but no longer Blanquette en chevaux. He bought her a mystical headgear, composed, as far as I could see, of 3 plums and a couple of feathers, which the girl wore with an air of happy martyrdom. He discoursed to her on the weather, and the political situation. At this period he began to develop Republican sympathies. Formerly he had swung, according to the caprice of the moment, from an irreconcilable nationalism to a fantastic anarchism. Now he was proud to identify himself with the once despised bourgeoisie. He would have taken to his bosom the draper papa of Hedwig of Kassel. Most of his time he spent in the studio at Ménilmontant. There, at any rate, he was at ease. We were not too disreputable for the umbrella, and though he deprecated the loose speech of Bringard and Bonnet, who had returned to Paris, and the queer personal habits of Cazalet, he appeared to find solace in our society. At any rate, the visits gave him occupation. He also posed for the body of Monsieur Tillet in an historical picture which Bringard proposed to exhibit at the Salon the following spring. "L'homme propose et Dieu expose," said Paragot. "If he's anything of a judge, that ought to be hung on the line," said Bonnet. I regret to say that the picture was rejected. At last the time came for the Melford visit. Paragot consulted Ewing and myself earnestly as to his outfit, and though he clung to his frock-coat suit as a garb of ceremony, we succeeded in sending him away with a semblance of English country-house attire. He took with him my portrait of Joanna, packed in a wooden case, and bearing, to my great pride, the legend, "Precious work of art, with great care," in French and English. When he had gone, I moved my belongings from my attic to the Rue des Saladiers, and gave myself up to the ministrations of Blanquette. A little while later I received from my dear lady an invitation to visit Melford and paint the portrait of her mother, who regarded my portrait of Joanna as a work of genius. If you are a young artist, it makes your head spin very pleasantly to hear yourself alluded to as a genius. Later in life you do not quite like it, for you have bitter knowledge of your limitations, and are mortally afraid your kind flatterers will find you out. But at 20 you really do not know whether you are a genius or not. Mrs. Rushworth, however, backed her opinion with 100 guineas. 100 guineas! When I read the words, I uttered a wild shriek which brought Blanquette in a fright from the bedroom. It was a commission, Joanna explained, and I was to accept it just like any other artist, and I was to stay with them, again like any other artist, during the sittings. "I am to go to England to paint another portrait, Blanquette. How much do you think I should be paid for it?" "Much?" queried Blanquette in her deliberate way. I indicated with swinging arms a balloon of gold. Blanquette reflected. 50 francs? 2,625 francs, I cried. Blanquette sat down in order to realize the sum. It was difficult for her to conceive thousands of francs. "That will make you rich for the rest of your life." "It is only the beginning," I exclaimed hopefully. Blanquette shook a reproachful head. "There are some folks who are never satisfied," she said. End of chapter 18.